To be frank, I am born and raised on the West Coast. So, if you're born and raised on the West Coast, I mean, that's a whole different world. That's a whole different lifestyle. That's a whole different section of geography. And when it comes to those natives, when it comes to even things like slavery, I mean, the West Coast has a vastly different history than the East Coast. For example, if I can share my screen here, we can see today we're going to be focusing on the East Coast. Something that they're going to really touch base on is the fact that the first explorers, quote unquote explorers, we say invaders, right? The first explorers were not the Europeans from Britain. In fact, in the 15th century, it was the Spanish. It was the Spaniards from Spain because again, this is the East Coast. If we look across here, what do we have? Spain. And nobody was taking a straight shot. Nobody at all was taking a straight shot across the North Atlantic. It wasn't feasible, just wasn't possible. Logistically, um, the ocean's gyres don't move that way. There's hurricanes, typhoons, you name it. So what they did is they went along the coast, went across to Brazil, went along the coast, made it to the West Indies, made it to the Americas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the first people to come over were the Spanish. And we're going to learn that they did a real dirty number on the indigenous folks. I mean, chopping off hands, chopping off limbs, subjugating them in more ways than one. And then when the Spanish leave, well, now a few years later, we have the British folks, the pilgrims, the colonists coming through. So we have to understand that the history of indigenous peoples in America is vastly different on the East Coast versus the West Coast. I mean, if we look at the West Coast, what's over here? We got China, Russia, Japan. Is there any surprise that a lot of the indigenous folks over here look a lot more mongoloid and Asiatic? Well, guess what? They say that there was three races of aboriginals. One were the blacks, two were the Asiatic looking ones who came across the Bering Strait, and three were the ones that were mixed with Russian and Asian, but were quote unquote still indigenous to North America. So we have to understand vastly different history between the West Coast and the East Coast. And today we are focusing on the East Coast.
Shout outs to Mike TV. He's helping me get my genealogy and tribal affiliations in order. I'm actually going to go to a family reunion this coming weekend. So shout out to you, Mike. And I got faith that you're going to make it happen. You know what I mean?